Hello, welcome to today's HR Huddle, May 8th. Hi, Jen. Thanks for joining me today. We've been starting our travels in our busy season as we've been meeting with firms and attending conferences and attending town halls. And one of the things that, as we come into May and we've been looking at talent and, talking about, how do we make sure we retain the talent after this busy season and, look at attracting talent this summer and all the initiatives that we're going to have going on. One of the topics that's been you've probably read about it or heard about it at different events is this idea of creating a culture that is full of psychological safety. And you could say, well, how does that matter in the firm, or what does that mean? So we thought we'd start by defining it and then maybe giving some examples of maybe some things that we should shift in what we're doing or how we're communicating or not communicating in some cases, with our team that is making them feel unsafe. And so as HR leaders here, that is something for you to make sure you're paying attention to, but we want to also give you some ideas and strategies for how you can maybe bring it back to your leadership group, or what you can do as you think about different initiatives or different things that are coming up. How do we communicate around it? What's the impact going to be on your team, et cetera. So let's start. And Jen, I'll give a definition of psychological safety, and then you can jump in here and expand on it or add to it. But when you think about psychological safety, you want to have your people feel like they know what they can count on and that it's consistent. And so, what do I mean by that? Well, maybe we have defined values and, respect and flexibility and, innovation is something that you value. And so then we would need to say, we have to respect and we have to facilitate that in our meetings, in our communications, in email with our clients. And so if somebody's innovating an idea and somebody else shuts it down and goes, that's a stupid idea, or yeah, no, we tried that, 5 years ago and it doesn't work for us. And we just need to move past that. And we're not going to spend any time on that. That's not very safe to be able to innovate and bring up ideas. And so this idea of psychological safety is that we know what we can count on, and our actions and our decisions and the way we interact with each other and around each other, how I interact maybe in a client meeting with my team there, it's count onable, it's consistent. So Jen, what would you add to that, or how would you expand that?
Well, so Tamera, I agree 100% that one of the biggest areas of psychological safety is this idea that I am not afraid. So I'm not afraid I'm going to be punished. I'm going to be made to look bad. I'm going to be embarrassed. I'm not afraid that I'm going to be diminished or demeaned in any way when I'm at work. So now that doesn't mean that I feel like you're going to give me a trophy and, slap a blue ribbon on my, shoulder every time I have a good idea or something. We're not talking about like an inauthentic environment, right? Of like everybody gets a atta girl and atta boy and good job, even when the job isn't good. And, we're still talking about authentic, transparent feedback, commitment to success, commitment to excellence, all those things. But people don't have to be afraid that there's going to be ugliness or things that are going to cause them fear or anxiety. And so, the number one first place to look for that is, we don't have any people in the organization at any level. A lot of people think, well, we don't have any leaders like this. None of our bosses or none of our C-suite or none of our partners are like this. Nowhere in the business can this exist where there is yelling and there is door slamming and there is, hand slams on the table, or people get cussed out, or voices are raised. There's, that kind of what I would call, sort of over the top intimidation behavior is utterly unacceptable and utterly disallowed. And the moment that it happens, it is stopped. And that person is counseled and they get performance managed, and maybe anger management and counseling for that is a condition of continued employment in the workplace. I mean, we nip that in the bud. And I think that's like what I'm going to call the base level of psychological safety. And Tamera, I hate to do this, but I'm going to layer something right next to it that we don't want to talk about, and you're going to kick me because I didn't I didn't say that I was thinking this, but mass shootings, which are happening in this country on average of 2 to 3 times a day in this country right now, every day for 2023. And we just had the mall shooting, just recently. Psychological safety is also not fearing for my physical safety because of my job. So you don't send me into environments or neighborhoods or those kinds of things that are scary or unsafe feeling. Like just, if I had to go to a hard hat environment to do my job and I could do that remotely instead, and I didn't feel safe in that sort of environment or whatever, but also like we lock the front door. We have Ring doorbell kind of technology on every single phone in the place, and we only accept people at the door by appointment only. We are careful about how we manage any sort of physical meetings to maximize safety. Now, we're not hiring an armed guard necessarily, I guess. I mean, maybe we're all going to get to that. I hate that idea, but we could get there, I guess, with the way it's going. But anyway, I just want to point out physical safety at the front door, pretty critical also. And for those that do have an office space where people come in, we've got to really look hard. Front desk reception can be too loose. And so I'm just going to put those on the base of our pyramid that we're going to grow of this psychological safety. No diminishing, demeaning, punishing, scary behavior from people that work here or clients, by the way. And you can take that one because you have a few thoughts on that. And then no unsafe environments where we feel physically at risk from external threats, let's say.
Yes. I will not kick you under the chair for that.
Well, and also, Tamera, concealed carry. If we're in a concealed carry state, that we have a policy against guns crossing the door when we're meeting. That's not allowed. And I know that that's controversial, but there's a bunch of us that wouldn't feel safe if we thought that half the office was packing.
Right.
In this current environment of these issues of mass shootings, most of us would not want to think that anybody could cross our threshold with a gun in their purse or in their back pocket.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think you're right, Jen, that we don't talk about those things. We politicize them instead of talk about, hey, this is a place of work. How do I make sure my people feel safe? How do I make sure they feel like they can work here and thrive and not be worried about those things? Or even just walking out into a parking lot at dark, for working late. It's at 4:30 in December, early January. It's dark here in Minnesota. And so, walking across that parking lot or walking, alone or whatever that might be, how do we make sure we facilitate that? And I appreciated your point about this pertains to clients. We started with this, what can I count on from you inside my firm, but also that my leaders are going to uphold that with my clients. And we've been talking about this for a long time. We've been talking about calling clients that are, punishing or, that are not, providing any kind of psychological safety for our staff. And we've just really got to double down on that. And, your team is going to have no tolerance for that. And so you could say, well, they're a good client and they, know so-and-so, and they're one of our biggest clients. And like, we could have we've been a client for 30 years or whatever the reason is. But if we say our values are respect and innovation and leadership and communication and transparency and authentic communications, then we have to say that includes our clients, and that should be part of our client qualification. That should be part of our client analysis. Every year, as you know, we're looking at what clients do we need to prune, and there's got to be a no tolerance. And yes, we might need to say that to clients that we've never said that before, and we can give them a warning. I've had to do that before. We don't have to do that very often, but we've had to do that before and just say, hey, we don't communicate that way to our team members, and we don't have any tolerance for communicating that way. And if it continues, we're going to have to, look at, what next steps are, because that's not going to work, for us having this relationship together. But your team has to see you take action on that in the moment, and they need to know that you are, going to honor what you say, and that we're going to be consistent. That's integrity. Integrity is one of our core principles of the accounting profession. And integrity is doing what I say I'm committed to. And so we've got to get real about that with our clients. And I think if you look at this past busy season, where did we step over that we need to go clean that up right now? And we need to clean it up with the client. We need to clean it up with the staff person that was impacted, or my partner, or somebody, you know what I mean? It could be anybody, my operations, my admin team. It could be anybody. And so we have to say, how do we clean that up? And that, by the way, is one action you can take to provide psychological safety, for people to see you in action, cleaning those things up that maybe we've, put blinders on or ignored, or I don't want to confront that, and say, no, this is who we said we're going to be. So we're going to address that.
I love that, Tamera. And, there is really nothing more positive that you can demonstrate to a fellow team member than I have your back. And I have your back is demonstrated by saying, hey, that's not how we do it here. And I have your back, whether it's inside or outside this place. If you're under attack, I'm going to be there, backing you up. That's what leaders have to demonstrate for one another. And not just senior leaders, but senior leaders first. Senior leaders demonstrate it first. And, I'm reminded there are partner groups all over this country that accept kind of what I'm going to call occasional nastiness within their ranks, and maybe also toward administrators. They accept it, and later they rationalize it as, I'm under a lot of stress, or it was busy season, or I have to be able to debate these issues with you, and you should be able to stand up to these arguments. And I'm the biggest supporter you'll ever find of healthy debate, and really evaluating options and pros and cons, and what's the rationale, and is this the right strategy, and should we study it further, but not in a way that makes anybody feel scared or bad or
Diminished
or sick.
Yes.
Kind of sickly. I feel sick to my stomach about this way this meeting's going, or the way this meeting went, or the meeting that's coming up. Those are all signals that we're not feeling psychological safety if we feel kind of like fear about it. And this is a job. And I know Tamera and we love this job, and it's kind of like our ministry and our vocation and our calling, but it's still work, and we're not going to let it beat us up. You can't mess up our health and our mental well-being and our sense of peace and joy and all of those things. That's not what it's supposed to do. We're not supposed to put up with that. And if we have it happening, we have to stop and be constructive and address it and change it. That's just how it is. And there's not enough money in the world coming from clients, or frankly, not enough money in the world coming from a single partner or something to put up with this.
Yeah. And Jen, I was listening to, kind of the different scenarios. If Emily were here talking with us, our colleague Emily, she would talk about psychological safety from a DE&I perspective. And we've been talking a lot about inclusivity. And that inclusivity, I think, is also important when we talk about psychological safety. What are we doing to make sure that, we are being inclusive of, diversity, whether it's people of color, whether it's people working 100% remote, whether it's, our, admin team, or whether it's, another, a group that we want to make sure, hey, we want to make sure we're not doing or saying things, or not doing or saying things that are not having people feel like they're included, and it's safe to be here. And it's safe to be here for who they are. I can be myself at work. I don't have to pretend I'm something else or something different. And so I think that's important for us to look at as we look at this idea of belonging and inclusivity, and from a DE&I perspective, that this psychological safety, has a reach over there. It's part of this discussion.
Big time. And the other thing I was thinking about while you were saying that is this whole idea that this the world is thinking, oh my goodness, we're getting so soft. Like, come on, man, like, so we raised our voice, so we slammed a door, so I called you all guys, so I stepped on your toes with the wrong language, that made you feel like I was not honoring Indigenous people, or some specific cultural group because I used insensitive language. There's a movement out there that says, hey, stop trying to make us watch every word and stop being so soft. I'm going to just tell you, I think that movement's wrong. I am making word mistakes and I am working on them. I am learning. And I remember when I first noticed my parents making word mistakes a long time ago. They used old phraseology that I knew was no longer acceptable. That's happening again in our country. There's this shift of a whole new set of language that we have to learn in order to be more inclusive. And that's not soft, that's called cultural evolution. And I fear that if we don't evolve, we become sort of extinct or irrelevant. So to me, don't let yourself off the hook for finding the right ways to be inclusive, including language, so that people do not feel in some way unsafe. Like, wow, that person, what they're saying doesn't include me. There's nothing worse than feeling excluded, to sitting in an audience and thinking this speaker doesn't know me or isn't talking to me, or to be in a conference room and think, I'm not really valued in here, or I really don't have a place here. So it's our job as leaders to bring that fear of being excluded, to stop that, and to look at all the ways we can be inclusive. And I love that word, inclusivity. I think it's so important for us to all work on. It's kind of like compassion. We could all be more compassionate. I'll tell you what, we could all be more inclusive.
Agreed. That was our pastor's sermon yesterday, was all on inclusivity. And I just thought it was brilliant. And if we just looked at everything through that lens, what kind of choices would we make? How would we communicate? How would we see people different? And I think that's one of the ways that we can start to, look at how are we doing in this area of psychological safety. That phrase, maybe has an edge to it, or, I don't know, something about it. But if you stop to say, what do we really mean by that? How does it feel to work here? How inclusive are we being? How are we creating that psychological safety? Then we can start to say, here's some things that we might not want to do anymore, that we might want to look at and re-examine and say, how can we make some changes there? How can we make some shifts there, to facilitate that? And so that might be something you bring and you talk about, at a partner meeting or a shareholder meeting, and you discuss, how are we doing in this area? Where might we want to, examine some things? We might talk about, if you have an employee advisory group, you can talk about, where does it feel safe here? Where does it not? What are some examples of it not being, feeling safe here? And let's look and see what we can do to make changes. And by the way, most of those changes don't cost anything. Now, if I have to let go of a client, I might have some lost revenue very temporarily, because as soon as I go talk to another client, or I pick up the phone and call that prospect, we will replace it in this market. Even with, all the discussion about the uncertainty, we know your clients, need help. They have problems. They need all kinds of help. And if we just were to go spend that time, we could replace that over here in a heartbeat. And so those are some ways that you could start to generate this conversation and start to bubble up and have people look at it and create it safe. We can't dismiss it. We can't, say no. It's got to be like a brainstorming exercise, almost like it's safe to bubble those things up and share those things that they identify.
Yes. And Tamera, something else that I just thought of related to that is that, talent is super hard to find, the right people. the right special talent that has the right, daily performance, the right intentions, the right behavior, the right potential. You invest all this time and money in training them. You can't have somebody inside your firm or outside your firm chasing them off, wearing them out, beating them down, figuratively speaking. Just, you can't. Those people that are causing that fatigue, that lack of safety, the lack of knowing what I can count on, the lack of being sure that I'm going to be heard and valued, those people are public enemy number one inside your firm and outside your firm. And we can't tolerate it. We just can't allow it.
And we
It's our
can't even
number
allow
one
it
job.
even within the partner group. You could say, well, we do that, within the partner group. It's only no, life is too short. And none of us, came to work to want to have those kinds of interactions or worry about an email, or I see somebody's name come across an email and you like cringe. Or you go into a meeting and you're worried about it. And it's like, I got to put my Teflon on or something. We've got to say all places. Cause sometimes we hear that, Jen, it's like, well, it might get heated here, but it's only with the partners. First of all, we don't buy that. Second of all, we can't have it there too, because it's beating people down. And, we've got to say, how do we have, healthy relationships, at our partner level, and, then foster it everywhere else as well. So,
well, and Tamera, there are no secrets in the partner group.
right.
If we think that stuff doesn't leak out and people don't talk about it, we're out of our minds. I mean, there's nothing that's secret that's happening in that little room. And then also, every time you welcome a new partner and they have to get indoctrinated to that like secret society of not niceness, they don't have to stay. They've got plenty of choices.
Right.
They don't have to buy into that. I wouldn't want to partner into that if my life depended on it at this stage in my life. No way. No. Yeah. So, and nobody has to. The market is too rich with opportunity. So I think this is job one of a leader. This is the base. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of professional needs. Bottom is, I feel safe. Everything else is gravy. And so if we haven't, firms are like, well, we have this perk and this training and this, they've got all these wonderful benefits. But if it's got that shaky platform of lack of safety and consistency and respect, it's not gonna sustain.
And if you want some assistance for how to raise these topic, or, how do I bring this forward to my leaders, just let us know. We would be happy to interact with you or talk to you about that. But it is your place, as HR leaders or other partners or other leaders, it is your place to raise it and say, hey, I think this is something we should explore and talk about and, examine within our firm. And you'll be glad you did. It will further you. Your team will admire you for it. They will respect you for it, especially when they start to see the changes that we make because of it. So let us know how it goes, or let us know if you have any questions about it. Otherwise, I think we need to wrap up, and we will see you next week. So have a great week, and we will talk to you next time. Thank you.